On December 4, 2017, the draft of the new Arizona State Science Standards will be presented to the State Board of Education and then released for public review. Before reviewing the standards, it is important to understand the revision process and the framework the committee was working under. Ultimately, the State Board of Education is responsible for adopting standards for all content areas in Arizona. The K-12 standards section of the Department of Education is in charge of managing the revision process. They have provided focus, structure, and guidance for working groups as the groups revise and craft new standards. The process began in 2016 with public feedback on the current standards. ADE brought together working groups to review the past standards, public feedback, and current research in science pedagogy and education. With the standards out for public review in December, ADE hopes to have the standards ready to present to the State Board of Education for adoption in April. The new standards have been written by Arizona K-12 teachers with input from college and university representatives, as well as business leaders and community members. As the working groups revised the standards, they were continually reminded about the focus of their work. The Department of Education adopts standards that determine what a student should know, but the how is left to school districts to decide. The new standards will not include performance objectives. The old performance objectives became much more of a checklist. Grade levels in courses could exceed 50 performance objectives, presenting a nearly insurmountable task for teachers and students. The focus has shifted away from larger conceptual learning into memorizing discrete facts or practicing skills in isolation. The new standards will shift our focus to the larger concepts and the interconnectivity of science. In this process, we're currently in the box that's outlined in red. However, we're quickly moving into that first purple box about releasing the draft for public feedback. The driving documents for the standards revision were a framework for K-12 science education, practices, cross-cutting concepts, and core ideas, and also working with big ideas of science education. The Committee on a Conceptual Framework for the new K-12 Science Education Standards was charged with developing a framework that articulates a broad set of expectations for students in science. The overarching goal of the framework for K-12 science education is to ensure that by the end of 12th grade, all students have some appreciation of the beauty and wonder of science, possess sufficient knowledge of science and engineering to engage in public discussions on related issues, are careful consumers of scientific and technological information related to their everyday lives, are able to continue to learn about science outside school, and have the skills to enter careers of their choice, including, but not limited to, careers in science, engineering, and technology. The framework is designed to help realize a vision for education in the sciences and engineering in which students over multiple years of school actively engage in scientific and engineering practices and apply cross-cutting concepts to deepen their understanding of the core ideas in the fields. Currently, K-12 science education in the United States fails to achieve these outcomes, in part because it is not organized systematically across multiple years of school, emphasizes discrete facts with a focus on breadth over depth, and does not provide students with engaging opportunities to experience how science is actually done. The framework is designed to directly address and overcome these weaknesses. The framework is based on a rich and growing body of research on teaching and learning in science, as well as on nearly 2 decades of effort to define foundational knowledge and skills for K-12 science and engineering. From this work, the committee concluded that K-12 science and engineering education should focus on a limited number of disciplinary core ideas and cross-cutting concepts, be designed so that students continually build on and revise their knowledge and abilities over multiple years, and support the integration of such knowledge and abilities with the practices needed to engage in scientific inquiry and engineering design. The committee recommended that science education in grades K-12 be built around 3 major dimensions. These dimensions are scientific and engineering practices, cross-cutting concepts that unify the study of science and engineering through their common application across fields, and core ideas in 4 discipline areas: physical sciences, life sciences, earth and space sciences, and engineering, technology, and applications of science. To support students' meaningful learning in science and engineering, all 3 dimensions need to be integrated into standards, curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Engineering and technology are featured alongside the natural sciences, physical sciences, life sciences, and earth and space sciences, for 2 critical reasons. First, to reflect the importance of understanding the human-built world, and second, to recognize the value of better integrating the teaching and learning of science, engineering, and technology. The framework represents the first step in a process that should inform state-level decisions and provide a research-grounded basis for improving science teaching and learning across the country. It is intended to guide standards developers, curriculum designers, assessment developers, state and district science administrators, professionals responsible for science teacher education, and science educators working in an informal setting. Science is not just a body of knowledge that reflects current understanding of the world. It is also a set of practices used to establish, extend, and refine that knowledge. Both elements, knowledge and practice, are essential. Dimension 1 describes, first, the major practices that scientists employ as they investigate and build models and theories about the world, and second, a key set of engineering practices that engineers use as they design and build systems. The term practices is used instead of a term such as skills to emphasize that engaging in scientific investigation requires not only skill, but also knowledge that is specific to each practice. Similarly, because the term inquiry, extensively referred to in previous standards documents, has been interpreted over time in many different ways throughout the science education community, part of the intent in articulating the practices in Dimension 1 is to better specify what is meant by inquiry in science and the range of cognitive, social, and physical practices that it requires. As in all inquiry-based approaches to science teaching, it is the expectation that students will themselves engage in the practices and not merely learn about them secondhand. Students cannot fully comprehend scientific practices nor fully appreciate the nature of scientific knowledge itself without directly experiencing these practices for themselves. The cross-cutting concepts have application across all domains of science. As such, they provide one way of linking across the domains in Dimension 3. These cross-cutting concepts are not unique to a framework for K-12 science education. They echo many of the unifying concepts and processes in the National Science Education Standards, the common themes in the benchmarks for science literacy, and the unifying concepts in the Science College Board Standards for College Success. The framework structure also reflects discussions related to the NSTA Science Anchors Project, which emphasize the need to consider not only disciplinary content, but also the ideas and practices that cut across the science disciplines. The continuing expansion of scientific knowledge makes it impossible to teach all the ideas related to a given discipline in exhaustive detail during the K-12 years. But given the amount of information available today, virtually at a touch, an important role of science education is not to teach all the facts, but rather to prepare students with sufficient core knowledge so that they can later acquire additional information on their own. An education focused on a limited set of ideas and practices in science and engineering should enable students to evaluate and select reliable sources of scientific information and allow them to continue their development well beyond their K-12 school years as science learners, users of scientific knowledge, and perhaps also as producers of such knowledge. With these ends in mind, the committee developed its small set of core ideas in science and engineering by applying criteria. Although not every core idea will satisfy every one of the criteria, to be regarded as core, each idea must meet at least 2 of them, though preferably 3 or 4. Specifically, a core idea in K-12 science instruction should, first, have a broad importance across multiple sciences or engineering disciplines, or be a key organizing principle of a science discipline. Second, provide a key tool for understanding or investigating more complex ideas and solving problems. Third, relate to the interests and life experiences of students, or be connected to societal or personal concerns that require scientific or technical knowledge. And fourth, be teachable and learnable over multiple grades at increasing levels of depth and sophistication. That is, the idea can be made accessible to younger students, but is broad enough to sustain continued investigation over years. The core ideas develop over grade levels as students increase in their ability to understand greater complexity in concepts. Again, it is expected that students will learn about core ideas as they practice science using the science and engineering practices. As you read through the document, you can see grade band endpoints, expectations of what students should understand by the end of the grade band. In the elementary and middle school grades, core ideas and cross-cutting relationships were identified by grade band and grade level for Arizona. Care was taken to ensure that all of the core ideas and cross-cutting relationships were included in each grade band. At the high school level, content remained organized around the main domains of science: life science, physical science, and earth and space science. As with the previous standards, districts will determine which standards fit into a high school course. Science and engineering practices were interwoven with the standards at all grade levels and grade bands. Working with Big Ideas in Science was written after the framework and Next Generation Science Standards. This document arose as a response to the rapid change in education in our digital age and to further embrace the interconnectivity of science in daily life. As with the framework, working with Big Ideas in Science encourages inquiry-based learning and creating connections with daily life. You will see commonalities with the framework as you look at these big ideas. The first 10 ideas are broad concepts that students should have the opportunity to learn before the end of compulsory education. Ideas 11 through 14 are more similar to what we know as strands 1, 2, and 3 from the current state standards. The focus is on the practice of science as well as understanding how science fits into the bigger picture of humanity and the universe. We use scientific practices to make meaning of the universe as well as bettering our condition. Within this context, we understand that nothing exists in isolation. Gaining new understanding and developing new technologies impact the larger world community. Working with Big Ideas in Science also breaks content into age bands and defines exit outcomes. Together, these two documents form the backbone of the committee's work on the new science standards. Downloads of both documents are available in this Canvas course, and I would encourage all teachers to look through these documents as we move towards implementing new standards. The standards will be posted on the Arizona Department of Education website following the December 4th board meeting. Check in with ADE or back in this Canvas course for the link to the standards. A few other comments about the review process. First and foremost, please take this opportunity to review and provide feedback on the draft. The new standards will guide science education in Arizona for at least the next 10 years, so please be involved in the process. Second, when you have concerns or questions, please look back at the guiding documents, the framework, and the big ideas before you express your concern. This will help you to be specific in your feedback. Is your concern about the guiding document itself? In other words, the standards meets the criteria in the document, but you have a different concern that regards the document itself. Or is the question about the standard? Is it about how it's worded, the standards agreement with the document, or something like that? The more specific your feedback, the better equipped the state committee will be to address your concerns. If you are reviewing and providing feedback with a team, please provide your feedback only one time on the ADE website. Let them know how many teachers are working together and submit your comments together. These do not need to be copied and pasted for each teacher. Change will come from valid points and concerns, not from the number of times that the concern is raised. For example, if 9,000 people want us to teach that the earth is flat, we still won't teach it that way. And third, please consider volunteering to work on the state level committee. Providing public comment is important and will absolutely help direct the committee, but the real opportunity to affect change in science education in Arizona is through participation. There are not many meetings left, but they will be reviewing public comments and refining the document to present to the state board. In Deer Valley, we will implement the new standards gradually over the next 3 school years. In 2018-19 school year, the new standards will be implemented in grades 3, 6, and biology to ensure that these students are prepared for the new state assessment in 2021. During the 18-19 school year, curriculum and assessment work will take place for kindergarten, grades 1, 2, 4, 7, and sophomore level classes. These grade levels will implement the new standards during the 19-20 school year. The final group, which is grades 5, 8, 11, and 12, will work on curriculum assessments during the 19-20 school year with implementation in the 2021 school year. The new state assessment will be in place in the spring of 2021, and there will be 3 levels of testing. At the elementary level, 5th grade students will be assessed over content taught in grades 3 through 5. At the middle school level, 8th grade students will be assessed over content taught in grades 6 through 8. And at the high school level, 11th grade students will be assessed over content taught during their freshman, sophomore, and junior years in high school. If you have any questions about the revision process, please contact Christine Allred. Thank you.